I think that's an absolute ingredient in Howard's work. All of his major characters are fish out of water. You know, they are, uh, Solomon Kane is a New England Puritan in Africa. El Borak is a gunfighter from El Paso, now in Afghanistan. You know, Steve Costigan goes from Galveston, Texas to the Asiatic ports of call, like Singapore, and so these guys went around the world, often as far away from Texas as he could fling them, and so I think that helped him to identify with his characters and vice versa, and I think that his stance as an outsider, whether it was real or imagined, found its way into 90% of the characters that he wrote, as developmentally speaking. Well, yeah, the irony of that is I think a lot of what Robert was doing is sort of indulging his uh, Texas strain of stoicism. You know, uh, thank you very much. I'll be humble. But I know he thought he was good, and I know he was proud of stories that he wrote, and certain things, for him, came into sharper focus than other times. But uh, it's that legacy of what he wrote in the short amount of time that he wrote it, and the quality with which most of that work is viewed. He wrote in nearly every genre. He wrote uh, reams of poetry, tons of stories, and it all moves. It's almost as if he knew, and this is very hokey and poetical, so please forgive me. It's almost as if he knew he was only going to have a half-life. And so he got busy writing a lifetime's worth of stuff in the short amount of time that he had. And so just as that was a fast-moving decision, all of his prose has this sort of effortless quality to it. At the World Fantasy Convention last year, Tim Powers said of Howard's work, when he finished reading it for the first time, he said, "I didn't know you could get that note on a horn." And I thought that was just one of the best descriptors for what Robert did. It was alchemy. It was wordsmith alchemy. All this time now, people are still trying to take the stories apart and figure out how he did it, why he did it, and all you can really do is respond to it on an emotional level. And I think that's the key to how understanding Howard's work is his stuff is pure emotion, and it reads from an emotional level. And what's nice about it is anybody who reads it, and if you get it, if you're the kind of person that reads it and gets it, you feel it in your gut. It's an emotional response, and that's what makes him endurant. He never fails to evoke an emotional response, and that's all you can ask of any art. It's I don't. It's not that surprising to me now. I used to think it was a big deal that nobody in Cross Plains knows, and I've come to realize now that you can't make somebody care about something that's not a part of their life. And so, in the case of Cross Plains, it's not much different from Brattlesboro, Vermont, where the Rudyard Kipling House is currently located. He lived there for 4 years and had the house built. It's been completely restored. He wrote the Jungle Book in the house. And nobody in Bratt knows anything about it. They don't know, they know who Kipling is. They know that there's a house here, but nobody's selling souvenirs. They look at me like, why would you want that? I don't know what I was thinking, So there's always going to be people who think that this is the kind of stuff people want to know about, and there's always going to be people in the same town who wonder why they have to care about it. And that's just one of those quirks of life. I don't think it's I don't think it's a bad thing. I think as long as you've got some people in town who care, then it doesn't really matter what the rest of the town thinks. But as a Texan, I would like to see Howard get more recognition as a Texas writer. That, of course, was the thrust for Blood and Thunder, but it was really born out of a need to kind of show people, he's a Texas writer. Not only is he a Texas writer, but he's unapologetically a Texas writer. He's, in some ways, he's more Texan than the guys who wrote all these westerns set in Texas, because he was dealing with Texas themes, Texas ideals. Howard was typifying his time and his place through these stories in a way that other Texas writers weren't, haven't, and didn't. So I think he absolutely deserves to be discussed with Larry McMurtry, Cormac McCarthy, Sandra Cisneros, any of the Texas luminaries, and yeah, he's the guy that wrote Conan, but he also wrote all this other stuff. Absolutely, Conan is both the best and the worst thing that could happen to Robert E. Howard. It's the best thing that could happen to Robert E. Howard because it's easy to hang a hook on. He's the creator of Conan. Oh, Conan the Barbarian, that guy, the star of movies and TV shows and comic books and cartoons and toys. And it's the worst thing that could happen because, like the folks who went before him, Doyle is forever linked to Sherlock Holmes, even though he wrote all of this other material and had a career that was enviable by anybody. Burroughs is forever linked to Tarzan, and not just Tarzan, but Tarzan the Savage Ape Man. Johnny Weissmuller's Me Tarzan, You Jane, not the guy who speaks multiple languages and dips in and out of society in the jungle with ease. So too, Robert now has Conan, his own literary albatross. This very complex character encompassing a moral center that is not unlike Texas gunfighters, in tone and temperament, now reduced to Arnold Schwarzenegger enunciating as if he's got marbles in his mouth. So, on one hand, you gotta thanks Conan, and on the other hand, why do we bother? It's a funny thing because I came late to the boxing stories, and I didn't discover them until I had gone through Conan and Solomon Kane and Cull and Bran McMorn and a few other things, and I was looking for more Howard and saw boxing stories and thought, yeah, sure, why not? When I read the first funny boxing story that I ever read, which was Sailor Dorgan and the Destiny Gorilla, now appropriately retitled Sailor Costigan and the Destiny Gorilla, I was flabbergasted at how fun they were. It's the first time I'd ever seen a hint of a sense of humor, a real sense of humor, not just a kind of a grimly funny part in a Conan story where he says something, he gets off a tough guy line, you go, ah, cool. No, laugh out loud, cry, pounding the table funny. And I'll never forget, I was reading these stories and they were killing me. I could not believe how good they were. And my buddy Lucas came home and said, "What are you laughing at?" And so I read him about 2.5 pages of it. And by the end of it, he's on the floor laughing. He's like, "Oh, you gotta let me borrow that when you're done." And so, and he's also a Howard fan of the same kind of stripe. And so, ever since I found those funny boxing stories, I felt like I had a little secret. I knew something that the other people who just are into Conan don't know. And it's that this guy knew how to laugh, and he could make other people laugh, and that was, so the Destiny Gorilla is one of my favorite stories of all time, just because it was the one that indoctrinated me into Howard's sense of humor.